Thank you guys for this amazing opportunity. I am more than excited to answer all the questions, have a wonderful discussion with you, and learn more about everything that I just told you. So I don't know if you guys want to jump into the Q&A, or Gabby or Heidi would like to.
I think, Myra, maybe we look at the reflective questions first. Okay, so let's just look at these first very, very quickly. So number one, yeah, okay, so what does motivation look like for you and your students at this moment? So I wonder if people could actually share ideas in the chat box. So in terms of motivation, tell us about your students. How motivated are they? And have you ever had any problems with students being unmotivated or demotivated? Just tell us how you feel about this, if you can. Janice is saying, yeah, very young students are hard to motivate sometimes. Well, actually, Janice, I think it's exactly the other way around.
Is it?
I mean, I don't know, but I find young, or maybe it's not. It's just that I feel that with older students, older students kind of understand why they want to study, why they want to learn. Okay, so maybe not very young, teenagers. I think this is the most difficult age group in terms of motivation.
That is true, yeah.
What do you think, Myra?
No, yes, absolutely. I think that little children don't need motivation. Little children just need to enjoy their everyday life, because they are more connected to the present. They are not in the neurotic future or past as adults may be. So the thing about children is that as long as you keep them enjoying the everyday process, they are more, they easily give into the process and enjoy it, and even if they don't enjoy a single process, they don't really get demotivated, as they don't have this sense of what the future will look like, or the past. Teenagers are definitely the hardest, precisely because of the concepts they have in the future of the future, because it's very hard for them to develop a self-image. And in terms of adults, is also there are more elements at play, I'm gonna say. But I think I've seen a few comments here. Martina says that motivation depends on the time of the day. First, the lesson are taught for teens. Well, in the case of teens, yes, the time of the day is definitely relevant. But like I said, it's not, the thing about motivation is that it comes from so many places. It's not just one thing, which is what I try to express with the 9 strategies. But the time factor, I think it's important. Henry's saying that the most difficult thing is to motivate them, specifically those who have been affected by this pandemic. Well, when you say specifically those who have been affected with this pandemic, it's everybody. it's them, it's us. No, it's everyone. This is why I am very passionate about motivation right now, because it's probably one of the hardest things considering the present context. And this is why in the last 2 strategies I said, guys, context is everything. And this is also why at the beginning I said, pep talks are insufficient. We need a lot more than that. We need to try to look at motivation in different aspects and dimensions.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say what you said about this pep talk and this, I just couldn't agree more. I mean, obviously, we can't say to students, I mean, if we say to students, or let me rephrase it, you can't motivate your students by saying, students, you have to be motivated, because it's almost some kind of a tautology, right? I mean, how can you, the whole concept of motivation is that you don't have to say to people that you need to be motivated, right? Because it should just come, okay? now, there was something that you used in your presentation, a question that I absolutely loved. But unfortunately, when we didn't have the time to actually engage with the question, so I wonder if we could use the question again, and maybe this time we'll get some more response.
Let's do it.
Yeah, there was this question about what advice would you give to a teacher, or what would you, yeah, what advice would you give to a teacher to totally demotivate your students? What would you do to demotivate your students? And I wonder, because it's a beautiful question, and we never ever phrase it this way. We always think, how can I motivate them? How can I get them to like it? How can I get them to work? Right, so now let us think for 1 minute, okay? What you, just one thing that you would do to demotivate your students.
Now, Gabby, while people provide their answers in the chat, I would like to share with you guys where this question actually came from, because there's actually a funny story as to why I decided to do this. So this comes from a technique called reverse thinking. You know, that is the first thing that we need to understand. Sometimes
Something happened.
Hello?
Yep.
Can you hear me? Oh, good.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, good. So please guys, as you all give us your responses in the chat, I just want to give
I don't think it's possible they will be listening to you now. So we either give them 1 minute or we listen to you, Myra. We listen to you first. Tell us.
Okay. I'm gonna be quick. So this reverse thinking technique I learned actually from a very personal experience where my neighbors were a very loving couple they were a couple of friends that I really liked, and they got divorced. They got a divorce.
Yeah.
And that was really painful for me. And then one day, he was the one who decided the divorce. And when I asked him why he had decided to divorce her, he said, no, wait, sorry. First, I asked her what happened. And she said, I don't know what happened. You know, I put on more makeup. I cooked more meals. I spent more time in the house. I did all these things, you know, and they didn't seem to work. And then when I spoke to him, he said, well, yes, I don't know, she cooked more meals, she helped more with the house, she did all these other things, but it was not about her doing more things. It was about her stopping, you know, some things. It was about her not doing some very annoying things.
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe that reverse thinking is, you know, how can I motivate my husband? I'm going to cook 2 more meals. That was not the answer. So maybe if she had asked a question, how can I demotivate my husband? She would have been more observant of all the things that she was doing that were causing the situation. So transferring this to the classroom is sometimes the good thing about this opposite question is that it's going to give you light on some things that maybe you should either stop doing or approach differently. So I'm going to let the people come back with their answers.
Yeah, I mean, we already have some answers, but before we
actually,
I want you to listen to me first. And my very, first thing that came to my mind when I saw this question, I immediately thought, right, if I keep talking throughout the lesson, just keep talking, okay, and talking, and you don't give students even a split second to engage with the material, to engage with other students, in the class. This is when I hope they will never come back to my class. Means I will be paid for 1 hour, no students, I don't have to teach. So just this is what I would do to put them off, okay? Hedy was also saying something.
It's just going back to Myra's example of that couple. It's actually how addiction works. You know, you do more of the same thing, expecting like reward, praise for that, but it's not necessarily working. So it goes the other way round very often. So it's like everything in moderation and not overdoing things. This is what has come to my mind.
But I'm sorry, there's a comment on the chat by Karina who says that she finds personal negative feedback to be extremely demotivating. Well, yes, and I just hope that this is why I said in the video, be careful. Reverse thinking is not negative thinking. It's just gaining a different perspective, because sometimes you get stuck with things like, okay, I have already done everything to motivate my students and it's not giving me a result. So like Heidi was saying, if you apply the same thinking process expecting a different result, it's not going to happen. So sometimes when we get stuck in this motivation question, what can I do? What can I do? Then ask yourself, what can I not do? You know, what and that reverse aspect, not negative, only reverse. May bring lots of light.
Yeah, but it actually seems that quite a few people, because earlier I think it was Hedy and it was also Maria who said, don't give them positive feedback. And this is what Karina is saying. She's saying something to this effect. So this feedback is very, very important. But I also love this idea of tell them they don't study enough. I mean, this is certainly something that my sister practices with her daughter, with my niece. And every time my sis says to my little niece, you don't study enough, the niece calls me to complain that she's not going to study at all because the parents don't appreciate her efforts. So yeah, I mean, very popular in what's that, Janice?
Yeah, it's basically it's very common in Asia that teacher will tell the student that you're not studying enough. So actually in Japan and Korea, they go to after school lesson for extra tutoring. And for example, in Korea, they wouldn't stop. They finish their day school at about 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. They have a small break for half an hour, and then they go straight to the tutoring. And they actually have dinner in the tutoring place, and then they wouldn't finish until 9 o'clock, sometimes 10. Even later for some. So it is in the culture that a student being told that you're not studying enough.
Which effectively is providing negative feedback in a sense, because it's instead of giving encouragement and positive feedback, you just put people down, right?
Now, maybe you may think, my students are not studying enough. It's a valid thought. However, you may say, okay, what is enough? Show them enough. Measure enough. No? How many objectives you have a day? This is where I go back to the systems. No? What is enough? Because if we don't have that sense of what is enough, then this is where perception may play negatively against us, you know. Maria is saying negative feedback can be soul destroying and not necessarily for teenagers. Absolutely. We need to focus not just on positive feedback, but on relevant feedback, no? On the way that you deliver that feedback.
And also when it comes to kind of blaming the students for not studying enough, what if we just take another standpoint and just look at ourselves? So is it necessarily the student? So when they do not achieve to our standard or to our expectations, it might not be to annoy us, but this is what they can do. So then it might be me who needs to change something about the way I'm teaching, the way I approach certain things. And the other thing is this, with this negative feedback, you cannot hate someone to succeed. Like how? It's when you want to lose weight and you hate your body, and then we wish you good luck to achieve your goals. I mean, so it's very important, and how we make them feel. So it might be the teacher's frustration, the frustration of the teacher that should be changed, and then the kids would be okay. So it might be me who needs to change their methods, their attitude, and that can be another thing to look at.
I think I absolutely agree with Hedy. Yeah, it's not necessarily, it can't actually be me as a teacher, right? So it is this teacher responsibility, right, about students being motivated. I have one more thing that I want to ask you, Myra. This is about because I have to tell you a little secret. I often think about motivation, and I have my own kind of little system or better still, a set of principles. Like you showed us the 8 principles, the 8 tips that you believe work in the classroom. So I have something very similar, but I even wrote it down. I only have 5 principles. But when I was listening to you, kind of looking at my principles and then looking at yours, I can see I was cross-checking them, and they are exactly the same. It's just that I kind of phrase them differently. And there's one thing in particular that I want to ask you about. Your principle number 3, where you say, turn goals into systems, right? So on my list, this actually is under learner autonomy and taking responsibility for your learning as a student. So my question is, to turn goals into systems, as you put it, okay, first of all, what happens if students don't know how to set goals? Okay, so this is my first question. And then my second question is, kind of once the goals are set, okay, students need to turn them into systems. But turning goals into systems is effectively developing learning strategies, because this is how I understand it, right? If you have a goal, then you need to think of how you are going to get there. So the how, right? So the how is understanding learning strategies. So could this be that the whole concept of motivation, okay, being motivated, staying motivated, is all about me as a learner developing and understanding learning strategies. So I'm intrinsically motivated because I understand what I do, how I do it, and when I do it, as opposed to just listening to parents and listening to teachers telling me that I have to be motivated. So I don't know if I've made my point clear. Please say this is clear.
Yes, you have. It's very clear and quite on point. Brilliant. Because this is the thing about systems. Okay, so systems are definitely strategies, no? But where are this? How the students really administer the strategies? Administrate
Yeah.
strategies. Because the good thing about what I call systems, the thing is that I don't call them just strategies, because the students may have a learning strategy, which is like I was like in the video, I was giving the example. Okay, so I want to learn a new vocabulary word, so I know that I need a dictionary.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know that my strategy is to, for example, compare a bilingual dictionary with a monolingual dictionary.
Yeah,
that's the strategy.
Yeah,
However,
yeah.
where is the system behind the strategy? They know they have the strategy, but the dictionaries aren't ready. Or they don't know exactly the type of dictionary that they need, or the dictionary may not be available during class time. So the
Yeah.
strategy is there, but not the system.
Yeah.
So what I mean with the system is that when the system is in place, and you are, let's say, demotivated because you may not be at your best every day, and when you are demotivated, the system is going to help you. The system is there to remind you that this is what has to be done, and then it's going to translate into a certain efficiency, that after some time you're going to see that maybe you were not so motivated, but you were very efficient, which is going to bring you back to being motivated again, you know? So yeah, everything was on point. I would just add this in order to differentiate strategy from system. So you have the strategy, but what is the system that supports the strategy? This is why I was giving the running shoes example. So my strategy is to run 30 minutes every day to lose weight, but if my tennis shoes are far away in the closet where I'm not going to find them every day, and I have to reach for my tennis shoes every day, then my system is not at place. So
let me just to get the better understanding, okay? Yeah. So say I'm a learner, okay, and then my goal is to improve, to learn vocabulary, okay? Now, so to get there, I have a very clear objective, right? So I have my goals set. Now I need to understand how to get there, okay? To in order for me to be motivated, I need to see this progress and I need to get there. So I know one of my strategies is that I know I can only learn about 5 new words a day. Okay, I know I constantly have to recycle this vocabulary. So I'm going to have little slips around my bedroom. Okay, and I will be checking them every single day. My next strategy is I'm going to write different sentences with these words every day. Next strategy is I'm going to have some kind of a notebook where I list the new words that I remember. So like I have a selection of learning strategies. So what's the system?
Okay. For example, you mentioned something very interesting. You said, I'm going to learn 5 new words, and I know that I have to recycle, and I know that I have to check, and I know that I have to write sentences, and maybe having flashcards around my room.
Yeah.
No? The flashcards around the room, that is your system. The specific notebook that you have for that vocabulary, that is your system.
So that's really the tools that I have, right?
Exactly.
And then the way I use the tools is how I develop the system into strategies, right?
Or how you develop the strategies into a system. Yes. Now, because listen, let's think of the example. You may give this let's learn 5 new vocabulary words every day to your entire classroom. So maybe one student is going to do the flashcards around the room, but maybe another student won't. Maybe another student has tangled up those new vocabulary words with some grammar concepts, with some reading. You know, they may be disorganized in that matter. So the system has to do with how you organize yourself, so that these things can happen. And now thinking about it, it would be very interesting to know, or to think about, if you give a class of, let's say, 10 people the same goal, and then after a week you may ask them, how have you been going about it? Students may surprise you. Students may come up with very creative systems without even thinking about that they are creating systems, you know, like flashcards around the room, or like carrying a bunch of flashcards around me. So maybe we all know the strategy, but we implement a different system to it. I don't know if we're getting there and if I'm making any sense here. But to me, the system is, you have your goal, then you have the strategies that are going to support that goal, and then those strategies need an environment to occur on a daily basis. The notebook, the flashcards, the correct dictionary.
But who creates the system? So basically, it's the teacher who creates the systems and feeds into student strategy. So
I think that system is something that teachers can suggest and create together with students, because now systems become very relevant also in the context of the pandemic. Why? Because we're working from home. Now, if you think about it, when you went to the physical building, that was a system. The system of having a classroom, which was a different place for recess time, which maybe was a different place from computer lab or from other type of laboratories, or I don't know, the physical space in school had this defined spaces, which in their way were systems that allowed you to have a certain dynamic or a certain methodology, you know. And there were timetables more specific, and there were people managing these activities. So the school as such was a system. So now that we are rid of those, of that natural system we were in, we have to recreate it at home. I'm not going to tell you that I'm a complete expert on how to go about it. I'm actually learning how to create my own systems myself. Because I am rid of my natural systems. So this environment,
we all are, aren't we? I mean, this is
and I think here comes, the concept of intuition that you mentioned, Myra, also knowing ourselves. And it's very important that, you know, like teachers often expect their students to be motivated and perform, but do they show an example? So students learn very often from observing others and things around them, and this is how they can pick up things. So we should show them an example how it is. And as you mentioned, I really loved your choice of vocabulary. You said we can suggest ideas, not telling them. So you have a list because you are older, you have more experience, you know more, and you suggest more ideas, you know, flashcards, notebooks, whatever we have, and then they can experiment with that. So allowing students space to experiment with what works best for them.
Yes.
Yeah, I can see. I'm just looking at the chat box as well, and we have been talking, and there's been a lot going on in the chat box. And Marta, I think, is saying this is really nice that students. It's the why question. It's what you said somewhere. Where did you say it? Principle 5, discipline, faculties. You said perception and reason. I call it just asking students why and asking yourself why. And Marta is saying something, instead of telling them, try to understand what they are doing and analyze what they are learning. So asking the question why as well. And it's not just the teacher, but also the students. So for students to be motivated, they need to be involved in the teaching and the learning process, right? They can't just be on the receiving end. They have to be part of the teaching and the learning. So they need to understand why the teacher is doing this particular activity, why they are having to do it, what they will how they will benefit from this activity. So the why question is extremely is the key, I think. Yeah,
the whys along with the what force and along with the hows, so that we have then far more a greater understanding of why a certain activity happens. For example, very quickly, I usually tell my students at the end of an activity or during an activity, I mean, this is something that can happen all the time, like, how are we being successful in this activity? How are we not? What for are we doing this activity? What other skills are we developing apart from just vocabulary? How can we go about it next time better?
Yeah, so it's essentially letting students or helping students understand, yes, the why, the how, and it's kind of, yeah, I mean, don't know what else to say, because it's a yes, yes, yes. That's what it is. Like allowing students to be part of also of you making decisions as a teacher. Fernanda is saying that the motivating students is easy when you don't give them the tools to deal with their work. I mean, this is another thing, right?
Yes. Actually, can I take this comment to answer another question that we have in the Q&A by Deepak Chol again? I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce that correctly. Thank you for your comment. He's teaching in Nepal. He's asking how I can motivate the students. This is the big question, right? That we are trying to answer here. So I'm gonna say, I don't know, I'm gonna sound a little crazy, but guys, don't stop motivating people. Make people feel able, capable every day, and then motivation will be a natural result. So if you feel stuck, like I was saying earlier, on how can I motivate your students, and you don't find an answer to that, think on how you can motivate them. That you could apply the reverse thinking that we said, or rather than thinking how you motivate them, how do I make them feel able? How do I make them feel included in all the teaching learning process? How can I make them feel capable of doing something? Then motivation for me is a natural result of that.
Yeah, that's the competencies you. But I also feel like, you know, this is linked to the idea of seeing your own progress, right? Because if you can see your own progress, this is something that's immediately motivating, right? So so perhaps, I mean, I can tell you what strategies I use to help students see their own progress. It's to do with, and it's also linked to your principle of, it's number 6, the law of minimum effort. And I felt like, right, so that's essentially, you said something, work on, you said something about like do less but get more out of
Get
it.
more out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, okay, like if you ask your students to do too much, right? Then if you say in terms of error correction, if you start correcting every single mistake they make, they will never ever see any progress, because you don't progress this way. So you need to kind of identify little things that you have to work on, and then you ignore all the rest. You just focus on that one little thing, and 1 week or 2 weeks, okay, you can see how much you have improved, right? Because you have this thing identified. This is your goal, um, and and the progress is visible. And this way, I think students get motivated, because this kind of makes them feel like, oh, I can do it. I'm competent, right? Because
Right.
that's what you were saying, developing competencies.
Yes, and it lowers stress.
Yeah.
Which is also very important. We are, and especially nowadays in the context of the pandemic, and I was reflecting upon this with a friend yesterday. Why are we always in such a hurry? Why does life has to be this rush? Why does life has to be this? Why we are like bunnies chasing carrots? Why can't we enjoy the path? Why can't we just walk the path and enjoy learning for the sake of expanding our consciousness and expanding our minds on every class, you know? So I don't know, if I went to Japan or Korea with the law of minimum effort, I would probably be banned from every school in China. But you know, efficiency also becomes very relevant. Somebody was asking me here, an anonymous attendee is saying that he finds it very difficult to manage students at home. And this is where I go back. Maybe if we were in the normal world in the past, I would have answered this differently. But considering that we are at home, that we have so many other things to deal with, this is why we need to be more efficient, because we also need to have time for ourselves. And we all seem to be overworked now that we are at home. I don't know if you guys had this feeling in the previous conversation that we had. Many teachers were saying, I'm working more now that I am at home than when I was at school. And it is the same with students. The students, I also, something I didn't have much time to incorporate in my video was that I actually surveyed a bunch of teenagers for this. And they were all saying, why so much homework? Why so much homework? Why can't teachers remember that I have a life at home? And even if I am 13, I don't have a life. I want to create one. Okay. So these smaller things, these smaller steps with more attainable results may keep us not only more motivated, but relaxed in the process and enjoy the process. Sometimes my students get very anxious when they say, oh my God, teacher, I didn't learn this. I'm getting this wrong. And then you should say, relax. Where's the rush? Learning is a joyful process of things in the class,
Yeah. I mean, I guess we often have to kind of work against parents as well, because when you think about it, I mean, there is a lot of pressure, right, at home from parents who very often want to live their kind of own dreams through their kids, right? So what happens is students come to school and they are already demotivated because they are having to go to school, right? And and then teachers kind of have to undo the damage, in the sense that yes, you have to develop this intrinsic motivation in students, because they feel like the only reason why they have to study is because they have to please their parents, right?
And that's why we need to create a balance. We cannot become the other parents, no, which is something that maybe sometimes unconsciously we do. But how do we help our students create a balance? The students trust us. The students go for a different perspective from the teachers. And I don't know, maybe this is going to raise some commotion, but I've also thought that sometimes as teachers, we do believe that we have to be there pleasing parents and pleasing parents.
Yes.
No, we are the educators. We are not the parents. We are not the entertainers. We are the educators. What is at the very center of that word? What is our commitment to society? Because we are not only educating a child or a teenager, we are educating a society every time we educate only one person. So becoming the balance for what happens at home is rather important. And I want to address another question here by Karina, who is asking me, how do you motivate students to continue learning outside of the classroom? And how can you see if their systems are effective? Would you use a reflective log or something similar? What about younger learners? Okay, Karina, first of all, yes, reflective log. I've always said that reflection is the most powerful teaching tool you can have in life, more than any teacher training course, is being reflective. So I would definitely keep a reflection log. And that, Karina, is the beginning of your system. So creating, if you have a reflective log along with your students, this is going to bring a lot of light, because I cannot really tell you how to motivate a single group. Something very interesting about teaching, and specifically about teaching languages, is that every group with every teacher is like a micro universe that has its own rules. And this is why teaching is, I find it to be very artistic. It's art, what we do, because we're working with people, and we're working with so many variables. So what I'm going to tell you to concretely answer this question is communication. Talk about your students talk to your students about the systems. Guys, how are you becoming organized at home? Because also every single household is another micro universe that is going to be very complex to understand. So very open communication. This times call for fantastic communication. We have to be more open than ever. How are we applying the strategies? How are we going about this? And also with younger kids, we got to empower younger kids more than ever. We got to make them more autonomous than ever. Hopefully we will have the time to extend on the autonomy subject. But open communication, Karina, do keep a log and make sure that this happens along with your students. Not everything has to come from you alone. No? Sort it out as a classroom. I have another question. Sorry, Gabby, I have another question here. Mary Giuseppe. Oh, I love the last names. This is how I know we are from all over the world. Could you labor a bit more on discipline and motivation and their close relationship? How effective could discipline be for the process of learning with disaffected students? Like I mentioned in the video, motivation and discipline go hand in hand. And then, but let's understand discipline. When you mean discipline, are you talking about the behavior they have in class? Are you talking about the discipline of delivering homeworks and delivering tasks? What are we talking about here? Because I think that the concept of discipline can also be quite ample. What we understand that discipline is. For example, I have teachers who've said, I want discipline because not everybody turns on the camera. The camera thing is a whole new discussion here. And I'm thinking, well, what are the reasons for students closing the cameras? There may be many. I mean, sometimes...
Well, I can tell you about my niece, why she closes her camera, because she does many other things when, during a lesson. So I guess this is the same for other students, right?
Okay, well, if a student is closing the camera because they are doing other things during the lesson, that means that they have a pretty messed up system. And this is where I'm going to go back to the systems. Your system has to be class time for this. Now, rather than telling the student, listen, I don't care if you have to clean your room. This is class time. How about being a little bit more sympathetic with this and say, all right, how can we all keep a clean room and then be in the classroom? How can we all create a system to be able to for example, I struggle with cooking my meals because I am very busy and I have to go down the kitchen and then I have to quickly fix a sandwich. What I mean to say here is that because we are home, it's important to understand what is happening at home. And this system creation I talk about has to do with how you organize yourself. In the classroom, she had no chance to do other things. Maybe she thinks she's multitasking, but maybe this is not really working for her. Maybe students close the camera because, and I've had this happen to me, there's a family issue happening in the back and they don't want you to see it. I've had that happen to me many times. I've had students who say, sorry, my parents are fighting, and they open the camera and I see the parents fighting. And I say, okay, close the camera, close the mic, we'll come back. Okay, because of the many, many situations that may occur, no? So discipline, just because it could be a very extensive topic, as I was saying, what are we talking about here? Discipline is, I'm gonna go back to just saying, this systems that we create. What happens in my hour of classroom? Where am I? Am I in bed? Then I have no system. Am I folding my clothes as I am in the classroom? Then I have no system.
Yeah, you know, I feel like with discipline, it's often the matter of trust, and it's the trust that you mentioned earlier. So, I mean, if you only use discipline to discipline students who just don't want to do anything, it's not going to work. Actually, it's going to have the opposite effect. At least it would have the opposite effect on me, because the more someone would discipline me, the more rebellious I'd be. So I'm feeling discipline, yes, but discipline is actually authority, and authority is trust. Okay, so there's a different. It depends on how you perceive discipline. The question was from Maria, so I wonder how she feels about it, because if she asked about discipline, she has strong feelings about it. I feel that you don't have to be, because we have two types of, I mean, we have so many different types of teachers, right? But we also have this type that is, you know, teachers who are very strict, and they have no discipline issue, uh, you know, when they teach, but it's the matter of students kind of trusting the teacher at the same time. So it's not a teacher who's trying to discipline a group of students who just run wild. It's the matter of having authority and this teacher presence, maybe. I don't know if you agree with me. But
I agree, authority and teacher presence, and then we're going to go by teaching more by the example of it. Let's be honest here. Let's be super honest. I have met teachers who say, I gave them these 3 activities and they failed to deliver the activities. And then I said, did you try the activities?
Mm-hmm.
No, I didn't. And then when they do, this I've done this in teacher training, they're like, oh my God, it took so long, it was so hard. There you go. So sometimes when we ask for discipline, do we know the discipline that is required for a certain activity before we actually demand it?
Mm-hmm.
It's a reflective question. I'm not saying that I have the answer.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the thing with different. Where does my authority come from? Where do I want to get? What do I want to get from this authority? And for me, discipline has always been a couple of things. First, the discipline, like you said, well, the authority, the relationship that you have, the type of authority that you establish in the class. There can be types of authority, not just one authority. No, actually, being the authority, what gives you authority? You get authority because you have the knowledge, because you have the tools, because you are the competent one. That's why you are the teacher. So how can you model that competency from your students? How do you teach? By example. Now, there are some situations where discipline in students can be really complex. And like I always say, teaching is an act of faith because you have to give your best to your students, but then you don't know exactly which tangible results you are going to get. So I hope we are going to the point. There are a couple more questions. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the questions in the chat. I don't want to go without answering everyone. Deepak is saying, thank you, Myra. I'm Phil. There are different types of students in class, different skills, heredity, desire, interest, and feelings, beliefs, but we have to deliver on same curriculum. I think we are killing their talents instead of improving their qualities. I always run away from the class after completing my course. Would you please suggest more on it? Wow, good question. Different skills, different talents, different desires, same curriculum. Wow, that is quite the question. Now, I would say I would go back to my eighth, I think it was my eighth strategy, the multiple intelligence strategy. The curriculum is there for a reason, and we cannot change the curriculum. The curriculum doesn't necessarily have to kill their talents, because the curriculum is there, but how you apply and you manage that curriculum is a very different story. So let's say we all need to learn something boring, like the cycle of a cell. I don't know. For me, that's super boring. Maybe not for other people. No. But the question behind that, the cycle of a living cell, is we need to be able to give the students a perspective of why this is important in real life, why this is relevant in real life, because there are scientists, because there are people who need to understand the cycle of cells, to understand, to have a greater understanding of living organisms. But teacher, I want to be a psychologist. Well, you're going to need to understand how people work. Now, it kind of goes back to the same question. Now, because they have different talents and skills, and we only have one curriculum, I'm going to go back to the AIR strategy. If something cannot be amazing and inspiring, then it can be analytic, then it can be interesting, then it can be food for thought, even if you're not going to use it in life, or this is not exactly what you pursue. Keeping active minds is going to help you keep more active learners, and then it's going to help you, or help them discover their talents. I don't know if I'm making any sense here, but if the curriculum is not fun or inspiring or relevant, there is always something interesting, And you have to find that interesting thing first so that you can convey it to your students. I don't know. This is the first thing that comes to my mind. Gabi,
Yeah.
how you want
It's the same problem. I think Deepak is essentially talking about what we have all been through. Okay, so mixed level, mixed ability class, people from different backgrounds just put together in the same room, and having to use the same materials or the same syllabus, the same course book with different people. So it's really the issue of how to differentiate your teaching. So obviously it's not, I mean, by differentiating teaching, you help students stay motivated. But then the concept of differentiation is such a big one that we would probably need a separate session. But yeah, I mean, just to make you feel better, Deepak, we have all been through this. Every single teacher has experienced this. That's part and parcel of being a teacher, I guess.
I personally love this constriction when you have a course book that you need to use and nothing else, because it really makes me think, how can I go around? How can I, what else can I add? It just helps me to be more creative.
Yeah, we can thrive on this, Hedy, right? Like
I love this. I really love this. I find this challenging. It's never boring. And this is when I can really focus on my students and take the same material and modify it, tailor it to their needs, to the best of my ability.
Tatiana, let's look at Tatiana's question because it's so nice.
Tatiana
says, 5 minutes.
How do you think about social distance and teacher-student relations? How close you can be to open and efficient in motivation, but not manipulated? What do you mean by manipulated?
Yeah, I was about to ask Tatiana, did you want to tell us? Because every time someone mentions the word manipulation when it comes to teaching, I come alive.
Yeah, because very often when you hear the word manipulation, people are like, woo, manipulation is bad. But if you want to jump off a bridge and I try and talk you out of that, that's good.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, because I
Well, I don't know. In my sociocultural context, manipulation is a strong word. So,
Yeah.
okay, social distance. Just while we get some clarity on this, Tatiana. Students getting too
Okay.
friendly. Okay, then that's a different concept. Listen, I think we need to be very open with our students, more than ever, very communicative with our students. But how do we keep students from getting too friendly? Well, I have two strategies for that. One is going to sound very, very simple, and you may not apply it because English is a different language here. But usually I use a lot when I talk to them, however personal the subject is. I always use respect forms. If anybody speaks Spanish, I don't know if you know, but Spanish has a specific language for usted or you or Mr. or Mrs. Even though they are very young and younger than me, I treat them on that basis. I usually say Mr. Jones, Mrs. Like, this is a way for me to draw the line. This is for me to say, you respect my seniority and I respect yours even when you don't have it. Okay,
Yeah.
but this is like,
Yeah.
this is a way for me, like the language that I use. I always start with this very respectful language. I never imitate my students, young jargon. I don't,
Yeah.
because something that I was saying is that something that we have to give to our students is the generation gap. When students and teachers get too friendly is because sometimes teachers want to close that gap by going closer into what the new generations are doing. And I would, for me, on a very personal level, it's the opposite. For me, it's you go into my realm, because I am the one who deserves the recognition of the seniority. So keeping the language where it has to be, never going down to the students' jargon, never going down to the students' language, in order to keep that respect that we want, not distance, but respect. No, always keeping it in the context of whatever we are talking about is for the benefit of your learning and all the things that may affect your learning. Yeah, like I was saying earlier, being very clear on our roles. We are not parents, we are not psychologists, we are teachers who are there to give support to any learning situation. So if the conversation I am having with my students is going to be helpful for the learning processes, then yes. If not, then no. Because we also need to learn to draw these lines for our own mental sanity.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need to learn to let go of certain things.
Yeah, you know how I feel about this, Myra? I often feel I'm just trying to remember myself when I was younger and a new teacher. What happens is, and that's only human nature, everybody likes to be liked. So when you start teaching, you kind of, you just want this recognition from your students. You want to feel that your students like you, because if you are liked, then you are a likable person and a good teacher. So I remember when I started teaching, I fell into that trap. I went through the phase where I thought I was the best teacher in the world. Nobody could beat me to the 5-star teacher because my students said so. So that's why now, after so many years of experience, I always say never ever trust this, because there is no such concept as the best teacher, right? So we like to be liked, and this is why we often want to close this gap, because we think that the students are friendly, then we are likable. But as you said quite rightly, there has to be a line drawn between the students and the teacher. So a very difficult concept, very difficult to draw this line, to still be friendly, but not kind of without making your students
No.
feeling that they can do or say things, you know.
Now I want to just close with this. Remember, I was saying, why are we teachers? I'm going to go back to the most basic question.
Yeah.
Why? What for? What is at the foundation of this career? I remember when parents call me and say, my kids say that your class wasn't fun. And I said, listen, I studied to be a teacher, not a clown. I am not in the business of entertainment. I am in the business of education. Okay, that's the career that I chose. I know it sounds a little harsh, just because it's between you and me, guys. But it is true. Secondly, remember I said teaching is an act of faith. Why is teaching an act of faith? Listen, guys, today I am an international consultant, an ELT consultant. One of the teachers I hated the most in college was my ELT teacher. Yeah, she was not very nice to me. I didn't like her, but she's the teacher I remember the most nowadays because she made me so resilient. She made me who I am today. Her name is Rosalia. She actually went to see me in one of my talks in a mixed TESOL, in a Mexican TESOL event. And then I remember looking at her and saying, "Thank you for being so difficult," because you really opened my eyes to so many things. So maybe Rosalia wasn't the teacher I liked the most, but she was the teacher I learned from the most, and I actually got the most from. Go take back to your mind to all your school teachers, and maybe you think, my teacher, I don't know, my teacher Maria was so nice. I don't remember a single thing, and I'm going to tell you that you're probably going to remember more from all those teachers who gave you a hard time. If we all have to say this, so guys, you chose wisdom. When you chose the career of teaching, we chose wisdom. We chose change. We didn't choose entertainment. Sometimes we won't be liked, and we need to learn to be okay with it. But this is why we also need our own systems. I want to be liked by my friends. If a couple of students don't like me, that's fine. I want my boyfriend to like me, and I want my friends to like me. But I want my students to be ready for life. I want my students to be successful. This is my leap of faith, because that guy tomorrow is going to be fantastic. I don't care if he hates me now. I honestly don't, So keeping those spheres in different places. Now, it doesn't mean that you become a horrible person. It's just do what needs to be done. Embrace your career. You chose wisdom, and with wisdom, many complex things come along. But remember, every class, that is what you chose. The change of society through knowledge and wisdom. That is going to keep you focused on what you are there for. I don't know if this makes any sense.
It makes a lot of sense, and yes, and you delivered it in such a passionate way that there's no way that it will not have the right effect on every single teacher who was watching you today, because yes, very passionate, as Marta has already put it, spot on, and yes, and very well put. So thank you very much, Mayra.